Well, hiya. It's Mason again, and today we're going to go back in time for just a bit because we're going to be talking about Patrick Henry. And if you do not know who Patrick Henry is, don't worry your pretty little mind. We're going to be talking about where the famous phrase, "give me liberty" or "give me death" came from. It was Patrick Henry that said that. So we're going to run through his life, his story, how and when and where he said those famous words. And then we're going to talk about his life a little bit. And I'm going to share my opinion, even though my opinion doesn't really matter that much. And I hope you know that. Like, I know that. I just want to make sure that you also are aware of that. So let's dive right in because I don't like to waste any time. I'm going to start right now. Right now. So, Patrick Henry. This man was born May 29th, 1736. Now, his father, Mr. John Henry, he was a Scottish-born schoolmaster. He was very well educated. He was deeply interested in the classical learning for his children. He believed in education. He was all about it. And his mother, she actually came from a very prominent family in Virginia, and she carried a very strong, very emotional, and almost fiery personality, which for women back then, it was like you can be a little bit fiery, but not too much. Now, from the beginning, Henry stood at a crossroads between intellect and instinct, the book learning versus the street smarts, that kind of thing. And unlike many of his founding fathers, he did not follow a very polished, very impressive academic path. He actually received some education from his dad, but never attended college, which was not suggested by Big Papa. Now, instead of learning in books in a linear way, his learning came in fragments. It was shaped by books, but it was also shaped by observations. It was shaped by experience. It was shaped by life itself. He was getting his boots on the ground, so to speak. So if others were these kind of carefully trained instruments that he was watching, Henry was actually more like a drum beat. He was very raw. He was very powerful. He was very impossible to ignore. He had the charisma. He had the knowledge. He had the street skills is really what I'm getting at. He was the well-experienced, lived a lot of life at a young age type of guy. Now, as a young adult, Patrick Henry tried very hard to find his place in the world. He failed more than once, and these are always my favorites. We can look often at these failures or when things were just not quite right and then see where they ended up, and it's always very funny to me. Now, Henry was no different than this. He opened a store, just, like a general store, immediately collapsed. He attempted farming, which he just wasn't good at it, brought very little success. Now, he did end up getting married at the age of 18. He married this lovely woman named Sarah Shelton, and they together started building a very modest little life. They were raising their children, and they were doing this while Henry was still kind of trying to search for stability. And when I say stability, I'm talking like he needed to get a job. He needed like a solid career, some financial stability. He needed to like make some moves because now he's got a family to support. Henry felt like there was something missing. He was not meant for quiet routines or steady ledgers or run-of-the-mill work. It just wasn't suiting him. He was in the wrong place. And we all know that when you're not doing what you were put on this earth to do, you feel like you can't get anything going and you're miserable doing it. So in his mid-20s, Henry makes the decision that he is going to be a lawyer. He's like, I'm going to try this out. This is a bold choice. So with only just a few weeks of some intense self-study, he actually passed the bar in 1760. Now, obviously, things were different back then. That's like unheard of. This sounds very improbable, and in many ways, it very much was. But Henry possessed something that you really just can't teach in these books, and this is the ability to speak. He had a very charismatic method of speech, and it was very electric, and it was very, very persuasive. It was a very good full body experience to watch this man. He was quite the entertainer. He was very electric. His major breakthrough came in a case known as Parsons' Cause. This case involved a dispute over clergy salaries, but Henry turned it into something much, much larger. So he's standing in front of the court and he's arguing that a king who overruled the laws of the colony had become, in effect, a tyrant. Now, this was a very dangerous argument. You can't really be saying these things in colonial America mid 1760s. You can't just be saying things out in the open like this, but he did, and the crowd loved it. Like, loved it. They're eating it up. So in that moment, Patrick Henry, he transforms just instantaneously from this unknown lawyer who's kind of finding his way to this rising political force. Things are going quite well for him. He's making a name for himself. But let's take a departure from his professional life. Let's talk personal for a minute, and this is no laughing matter. Henry's personal life was marked by both devotion and a lot of tragedy. Now, his first wife, Sarah Shelton, she struggled with mental illness greatly, and she ended up passing away in 1775 at their Scotchtown plantation. Now, this was likely due to complications from severe mental illness, and a lot of people think that it was possibly due to postpartum psychosis, because this was following the birth of their sixth child, and she was actually confined to the basement, and she was sometimes bound in a straitjacket to prevent self-harm. Now, some accounts are suggesting that she may have passed by self-inflicted. Mental health has always been an issue for people, and this is not necessarily a new thing. I think it's an increasing thing. I think it's happening more frequently. We also have cell phones, so we're seeing that it's happening and we're talking about it more, which I also think can be a good thing. There are more resources for solutions rather than being confined in your basement wearing a straitjacket. But I do want to point out that that kind of stuff did happen, and it happened a lot. And it makes me wonder, is it brain chemistry? Is it childhood, nature, nurture? What's the deal there? And I think a lot of people who are much smarter than I are pondering these types of questions. But that is very, very real and very saddening and very crushing. And I will also tell you that her decline and her passing deeply affected Patrick Henry. He did not take this very well. He did eventually get remarried to Miss Dorothy Dandridge, and he ended up having several more children, which, I mean, back then, no birth control. So in total, I will tell you, he fathered 17 children, and his home life was often very full, and it was very busy and very complicated, which I'm sure you can imagine. With 17 little ones running around, things were probably a little bit crazy. I also would like to point out that despite the fact that at this time Patrick Henry is really making a professional name for himself, and he's actually becoming quite famous because he's unafraid to say things that everybody else is thinking, he remained very deeply tied to his family life, and he really liked his life in Virginia, the more quiet life that he was familiar with from his own childhood, and he remained very intertwined with his roots and with his family.